You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Trump left instructions for what to do if Iran killed him, based on an article by Sarah K. Burris. Threat inflation is the point, the only real power here. The source story is about a credible threat to Donald Trump, but the real exercise of power is less dramatic and more revealing. Trump, still functioning as commander-in-chief, publicly frames himself as a man with a kill list and a standing order to bomb them if anything happens to him. That is not confusion. That is the language of an executive who treats state violence as a personal inheritance. The article also notes that if Trump were killed, J.D. Vance would become president, which matters because the legal authority Trump imagines for post-assassination retaliation would not automatically survive him. Even in this fevered dream of retaliation, the Constitution still intrudes on his fantasy. Who enabled what? The credible threat reportedly came through Israeli intelligence, while the reported anti-Trump rhetoric in Iran was amplified by funeral theatrics, posters, and speeches. Those are the immediate facts. But the political decision-making sits elsewhere. Trump chooses to translate threat reports into maximalist annihilation talk. He is not merely relaying danger. He is laundering it through his own brand of revenge politics. That distinction matters. Intelligence alerts do not force a leader to posture like a warlord. Trump does that because it serves him. It dramatizes his vulnerability, elevates his personal grievance, and converts a geopolitical story into a loyalty test. The story's built in misdirection. The piece risks doing exactly what bad national security coverage so often does. It treats escalation as atmosphere instead of authorship. The threat becomes the headline, while the decision to answer any attempt on his life with mass destruction is treated like colorful context. It is not context. It is the most consequential sentence in the story. Trump's denial that Israel came up with anything does not cleanse the situation. It underscores the instability of the narrative itself. The reporting leaves readers with a swirl of threat claims, ceremonial bloodlust, and presidential bravado, but the power question is simpler than that. Trump is the one speaking for U.S. force. Trump is the one deciding how to frame retaliation. Trump is the one turning state violence into personal myth. Revenge is governance. The article quotes Trump saying Iran has been after him for years, and that if anything happened, he would wipe Iran off the face of this earth. That is not deterrence in any serious strategic sense. It is the grammar of authoritarian masculinity, the leader as embodied nation, the personal insult as casus belli, the state as a weaponized extension of ego. This is how political violence becomes normal in public discourse. The threat is real enough to justify alarm, but the response is inflated into civilizational annihilation. The gap between those two things is where accountability dies. A republic is supposed to separate personal vendetta from state policy. Trump erases that boundary on purpose. What the article misses: the story gestures at legality by noting that Trump would no longer be commander-in-chief if killed, and that Vance would take over. That is the right instinct, but the article still lets the broader problem remain hazy. The danger is not only whether Trump's specific order could be executed. The danger is that a president can casually speak as though mass retaliation is a personal standby setting. That is institutional rot, not just rhetoric. A political system that permits this kind of language from its highest office has already absorbed too much cruelty as normal administration. The larger pattern. This is what democratic decay looks like when narrated as a security story: personalized power, theatrical threat, and state violence imagined as private revenge. The press can file it under credible threat and response, but the deeper pattern is that strawmen turn danger into license. They do not merely defend the state. They fuse the state to their own grievance and call that leadership. The only serious reading of this story is that the machinery of U.S. power is still being described through one man's rage. That is the problem, not the spectacle around it. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternate for today's article. With the automated voice of Sam, thanks for listening.